You know, I read a story in one of the newspapers recently, how I control the 3 Supreme Court justices. I control them. They're puppets. I read it about Bill Barr, that he's my personal attorney, that he'll do anything for me. The media's genius. In fact, probably if I was the media, I'd do it the same way. I hate to say it. But we got to get them straightened out.
Mr. Trump, Romney also talked about your position on race and the controversy over your failure to denounce David Duke on Sunday. You have repeatedly disavowed him since then, but I'd like to go deeper than that. What are your views on the Ku Klux Klan and white supremacists?
I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I totally disavow David Duke. I've been doing it now for 2 weeks. You're probably about the 18th person that's asked me the question. It was very clear. That question was also talked about in the form of groups. I want to know, which groups are you talking about? You have to tell me which groups. Ultimately, he got to the Ku Klux Klan, which obviously I'm going to disavow. And by the way, if you look on my Twitter account, almost immediately after the program, they were disavowed again. You know, it's amazing. When I do something on Twitter, everybody picks it up, goes all over the place. But when I did this one, nobody ever picks it up. Take a look at my Twitter account.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. As I said on Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. And as I have said many times before, no matter the color of our skin, we all live under the same laws. We all salute the same great flag, and we are all made by the same Almighty God. We must love each other, show affection for each other, and unite together in condemnation of hatred, bigotry, and violence. We must rediscover the bonds of love and loyalty that bring us together as Americans. Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. We are a nation founded on the truth that all of us are created equal. We are equal in the eyes of our Creator. We are equal under the law, and we are equal under our Constitution. Those who spread violence in the name of bigotry strike at the very core of America.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
to
specifically
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
who would
right
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a... The media's genius. In fact, probably if I was the media, I'd do it the same way. I hate to say it. But we got to get them straightened out. Today, for the sake of our democracy. And as I have said many times before, no matter the color of our skin, we all live under the same laws. We all salute the same great flag, and we are all made by the same Almighty God.
He will not divide us!
We must love each other. Show affection for each other and unite together.
He's very pleased with the production out of the FBI. I am not. Let me just give you one example. Here's a document we got from the General Services Administration. You can see that it's an email, and everything's presented except for the very bottom They've redacted the mobile phone number of the person writing the email. Here's the exact same email we got from the FBI. You see something different here? Everything is redacted. And that, we're supposed to get thousands of pages from I can finally subpoena the FBI. They are on their second extension. Everything is due by, I think, the 30th of September, and that's the kind of information we get. It's non-information. We have to fight over redacting the same documents that we get from other agencies. So I am not happy at all with the document production we've gotten out of Director Wray and the FBI. Not even close.
Just because no FBI agent tells the Inspector General, I admit I'm biased and politically motivated against President Trump, doesn't mean there isn't overwhelming evidence of bias and political motivation in the record. To use just one example, an FBI lawyer involved intimately in this FISA process against a Trump campaign associate, Carter Page, sent a number of texts in and around the election of President Trump. Here are a few of them. The crazies finally won. Another one. This is the Tea Party on steroids. Another one. Pence is stupid. Another text that he sent. I just can't imagine the systematic disassembly of the process, the progress we've made over the last 8 years. And finally, when asked whether he intended to keep working during the Trump administration, he said, quote, "Viva la resistance." Regardless of what that FBI lawyer admitted, do you see evidence of political bias or motivation against President Trump in those text messages? That very same FBI agent is the one the Inspector General found in his report was the one that tampered with evidence by counterfeiting an email from an intelligence agency to illegally continue surveillance of a Trump campaign. Director Wray, I love the FBI. You know my background. I know what you're trying to do. I know the difficult position that you're in. I think the record is clear. I remain convinced that the prior administration weaponized the FBI for political motivation and purposes. I just wonder whether or not you're going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle.
Why is Christopher Wray still in charge of the FBI when he is overseeing these agents sitting on things?
His job should be to restore the credibility and integrity of the FBI, and the only way you do that is through exposure. But the other point I have to make, Maria, when we finally do get these classified sections redacted or unredacted, when they become declassified, you look at what information you have, and you have to ask yourself the question, what national security interest was at stake here? Why was this ever redacted? The answer is almost always because it embarrassed the agency or it embarrassed a powerful person. That is not the reason to classify information. It's certainly not the reason to keep the truth from the American public.
There's a report that Mr. Kleinsmith that altered information that was supplied to the FISA court, that he was allowed to resign. Is that accurate?
Well, Mr. Kleinsmith is no longer with the FBI, and I don't think I can comment on a specific personnel matter beyond that.
Okay, well, let me tell you,
sit here right now.
When you have an FBI agent, and you don't need to defend the 37,000 employees, they're not being questioned here. And I can tell you, as a former felony judge, I had FBI agents come to me. They would never have dreamed of lying in an affidavit or changing information to misrepresent the facts to me or any other judge. There are people across the country whose reputations have been sullied by the improper, or I believe you said unacceptable and unrepresentative actions at the FBI here in Washington, D.C. They're not under attack, but the reputation of the FBI has been so sullied. And we all hope that when you became director, you were going to help fix that. But I can tell you, I know that you wouldn't be in this position if you didn't believe that there was deterrent effect in punishment. That's what law enforcement is engaged in, at least part of the job. So when you have somebody that violates American civil rights and commits a fraud upon the FISA court and the court doesn't do anything but appoint somebody that's friendly to the position of the fraud as an amicus, then we continue to have questions not only about what needs to be done to fix FISA, but if we ought to go back to the way it was before the 70s. So this is serious. So when you have an FBI agent, and surely you're aware, to commit a fraud upon a FISA court or any court, or to misrepresent facts in something that is sworn, those can involve crimes. And this guy's not even fired, and there's no indication he's going to be prosecuted. I know you're saying it's a personnel matter, so I can't get into it, but I'm telling you, the FBI reputation here in Washington cannot be cleaned up until there are people that are held to account for the unacceptable actions here in Washington. And letting somebody resign sends a message to anybody else that wants to get political active and use their job at the FBI to further a political will. The message to them is, well, if I get caught, I'll be asked to go take a better paying job somewhere else. Great punishment, no deterrence, and business goes on as usual. We needed an FBI director that would clean this mess up so America could feel good about it. And I can tell you, when you come in and say, it's a personnel matter, can't really deal with it or talk about it, you're not helping improve the reputation.
Let me ask you this question, Mr. Ray. Greg Jarrett, the journalist, wrote a book, actually a series of books, on the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. And in his latest book, he describes it as the story of ambitious and unscrupulous people in high positions of government who abused their authority. They sought to subvert the rule of law and undermine the democratic process. They weaponized their powers to influence a presidential election, undo the result they did not like, and extrude the elected president from office. Our intelligence community and the FBI were at the heart of this illicit and unprecedented scheme. As director of the FBI, what's your response to that observation?
My response is that the conduct described in the Inspector General's report is unacceptable.
You say unacceptable.
And that it's unrepresentative of the FBI that I see every day working there as director.
And let me ask you, who's been fired as a result of the Inspector General's report?
Well, most of the people involved in the investigation that's featured in the Inspector General report.
Who's been fired?
Well, there are a few people who are no longer with the FBI. Some of them have been terminated. Some of them left on their own.
Well, let me ask you
some
this.
of them have sued me.
Who's been disciplined? Who's been disciplined?
Like I said, there have been a number of people who have been terminated from the FBI. Some of them
Terminated
have sued
or
me.
allowed to resign?
Well, in some cases, terminated.
Yeah, you use the word unacceptable. I would think you would find a stronger word for that over what has happened by the actions of people who sullied the reputations of every decent person at the FBI and disgraced the agency that you now head. You know, the FBI is entrusted with the most terrifying powers that we can give our government, the power to ruin people's lives, to invade their privacy, to launch pre-dawn raids on their homes, to bankrupt them with legal costs, to deprive them of their liberty. We entrust you and your agency with these powers to protect our liberty and to protect our safety. And when those powers are abused in the manner that we saw in this whole Russian collusion hoax, that's a direct threat to our freedom and to the credibility of your agency. And I'm terribly disappointed that you cannot summon the outrage to put it in stronger words than just this is unacceptable and doesn't represent the FBI. Unfortunately, at the moment, it does represent the FBI, or at least the leadership of the FBI that committed these abuses. You were appointed to clean things up. I'm just... After reading the IG's report and the Strzok and Page emails and the actions of Bruce and Nellie Orr and McCabe and Comey, frankly, Mr. Director, I don't trust your agency.
The Steele dossier is not in the FISA. It was not submitted to the court. There's information from Steele that's in the application, but my understanding, and again, I reviewed a lot of FISA applications during my tenure, my understanding is that what's in that affidavits is verified. And so the Steele dossier and all the nonsense that was in the media about these allegations that have been made, that's not in the FISA application.
We concluded that the Steele reporting played a central and essential role in the decision to seek a FISA order.
Have you looked at the Horowitz report?
Yes, I have. I have it with me, Senator.
You have read the Inspector General report, Mr. Rosenstein?
I've read most of it, yes, sir. So the Steele dossier and all the nonsense that was in the media about these allegations that have been made, that's not in the FISA application.
Have you looked at the Horowitz report?
Yes, I have. I have it with me, Senator.
You have read the Inspector General report, Mr. Rosenstein?
I've read most of it, yes, sir. I've read most of it, yes, sir.
Let me ask you this question, Mr. Ray. Greg Jarrett, the journalist, wrote a book, actually a series of books, on the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. And in his latest book, he describes it as the story of ambitious and unscrupulous people in high positions of government who abused their authority. They sought to subvert the rule of law and undermine the democratic process. They weaponized their powers to influence a presidential election, undo the result they did not like, and extrude the elected president from office. Our intelligence community and the FBI were at the heart of this illicit and unprecedented scheme.
Please exit the floor by the room. Let's go. Let's just start. Okay.
Madam Speaker and members of Congress, pursuant to the Constitution and the laws of the United States, the Senate and House of Representatives are meeting in joint session to verify the certificates and count the votes of the electors of the several states for President and Vice President of the United States. After ascertainment has been had that the certificates are authentic and correct in form, the tellers will count and make a list of the votes cast by the electors of the several states. The tellers on the part of the two houses have taken their places at the clerk's desk. Without objection, the tellers will dispense with the reading of the formal portions of the certificates. After ascertaining that the certificates are regular in form and authentic, the tellers will announce the votes cast by the electors for each state, beginning with Alabama, which the parliamentarians advise me is the only certificate of vote from that state and purports to be a return from the state, and that has annexed to it a certificate from an authority of that state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors. Mr. Blunt. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Point of order, parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Vice President. In order to follow with the Speaker's instructions that only a limited number of people be on the floor, may I ask how one would make an objection or make a parliamentary inquiry in the future if you're not on the floor but in the gallery?
Under Section 18 of Title III of the United States Code, debate is not permitted in the joint session. Gentleman's recognized.
I'm not attempting to debate. I'm trying to find out how a parliamentary inquiry or a parliamentary point of order would be made in following with the Speaker's request that most of us not be on the floor. How do you make one of those points of order when you don't know what's going to happen later?
Respectfully, the gentleman's parliamentary inquiry constitutes debate, which is not permitted in the joint session under Section 18 of Title III United States Code. With that, Mr. Blunt.
Hence is stupid.
Have you looked at the Horowitz report?
The media's genius. Racism is evil.
He will not divide us! 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 He will not divide us.
Because that very same FBI agent is the one the Inspector General found in his report was the one that tampered with evidence by counterfeiting an email from an intelligence agency to illegally continue surveillance of a Trump campaign associate. That's what happened, right, Director?
Again, I would just refer you to the report.
You've read the Inspector General report.
We concluded that the Steele reporting played a central and essential role in the decision to seek a FISA order.
Mike Pence has to agree to send it back.
Let me ask you this question, Mr. Ray. Greg Jarrett, the journalist, wrote a book, actually a series of books, on the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. And in his latest book, he describes it as the story of ambitious and unscrupulous people in high positions of government who abused their authority. They sought to subvert the rule of law and undermine the democratic process. They weaponized their powers to influence a presidential election, undo the result they did not like, and extrude the elected president from office. Our intelligence community and the FBI were at the heart of this illicit and unprecedented scheme.
3 million likes. Smash the like button.